Thanks for joining me for the Services Delivery Advisory Hour. Today I'm going to talk about building a documentation framework to prepare services delivery organizations for AI optimized services delivery. These sessions occur every Friday from 11 to noon Eastern Standard Time. So I want to ask you a question to start off today. How confident are you in your current documentation to guide artificial intelligence or self-service support? So how confident are we that we've got the documentation on our products, our services offerings, our configuration, best practices, methodologies, all of those things to help AI assistance, right, or self-service support, whether it be customers implementing, partners implementing, or even tuning your implementers, consultants, and project managers to implement the best, the most efficient, and the quickest way. So I want to just frame this as an opportunity. If you go to the internet, agents and chatbots are literally everywhere. This is a screenshot of Salesforce website. There's an agent that pops up asking me a question, right? What can I help you with? I go to priceline.com. Maybe I'm looking for a flight or a hotel or a rental car. I've got the same type of experience where there is an AI assistant that is ready to help me do the things that I'm looking to do, right? So the same thing is going to happen and is starting to happen in services delivery. So I asked you earlier, what documentation do you have and what confidence do you have in that documentation to drive an AI assisted or self-service model in the future? Let me ask you this. What if your team had a purpose-built set of agents to help you deliver with your customers and partners? How impactful would that be? Couple of examples that I'm thinking through are internal agents that help to drive awareness and help drive some consistency and speed and velocity in onboarding new consultants and project managers, consistency and standardization in how we're delivering from project to project, and then requirements tracking, testing toolkits, you name it. If you've got data, you've got conversations, and you've got documentation, we can make it happen. Think of customer agents or customer facing agents that will help them do self-service configuration, help them input requirements for design, testing, right? Maybe help provide feedback along the way. Those things all driving self-service ability and help you implement better for them, know when to plug in, right? And when to support the customer if they need it along the way. And then think about a partner ecosystem where you can spin up a partnership relatively quickly and get those partner resources spun up, give them the same access to configuration via the chat and the delivery agent, give them access to best practices and methodologies and things to avoid and common pitfalls with certain industries or verticals or, you know, regions, languages, and things of that nature that not all SaaS, software and technologies can accommodate very well. So we've all always got this, level of tribal knowledge, right? Or knowledge that's really just held within a couple of senior consultants' brains, where they're maybe thinking of, hey, if I'm doing XYZ project in this region or in this industry, I need to watch out for these three things that I've been burnt by in the past. Those things can be built into our documentation and help drive these forward-facing services delivery agents. So where do we start, right? I know that there's a lot of talk in the market. If you go on LinkedIn or you're reading any business type of news, AI is everywhere, right? I mentioned that if you go to any website, chances are you've got a agent that's popping up in your face asking you, how can I help, right? Which is a good thing ultimately for us because as services providers, project managers, delivery consultants, we want to get our customers the information that they need to make decisions. We want to collect information from the customers in a timely fashion. We want to do things as quickly and efficiently as possible so that we can spend our time doing those value added things like developing customer relationships, driving decisions and driving their time to value, and really helping them see the value in our company, our product, and our solutions, and us as consultants, so that chances are they expand their solution. They choose us to optimize their solution. They're renewing our product, things of that nature that we want to start tuning our minds to. So the future is really here, right? Our purpose for today is to start small, but start in a meaningful and impactful way. So we can use this time to strengthen our consistency and efficiency right now, help to reduce that onboarding friction down the line, and then build a foundation for that AI-enabled self-service and chat agent capability. So it really starts, in my opinion, with documentation, right? And I know documentation is not everyone's favorite thing because people are jumping from one project to the next, one call to the next. We can start small by recording our meetings, getting meaningful transcripts, and getting those transcribed out into best practices, documentation, things of that nature that we can start doing now if we don't have all the time in the world to start building out or refining documentation. So we want to start really by documenting our standard offerings. Our offerings are a set of products and functionality and scope that we're delivering to a customer. An example of an offering could be, I am implementing a Salesforce CRM solution to help enable a SaaS company or any company gather account information, get leads, opportunities, and make deals happen. That's essentially a very high level definition or example of a solution in an offering. So I want you to start off by really inventorying all of your existing services. So take a look at what services you offer, what are the different sizes and shapes and variations of those offerings. Be honest with yourselves and ask, do you have a configuration checklist? Do you have an implementation process for that particular solution? Chances are the answer to that question is no, and that's a really great place to start. You want to also think about, if you're in a leadership capacity, who's the best person or group or groups of people to contribute to the documentation and the conversation. If you're in a larger software as a service company, right, chances are you've got a product team, R&D, you've got customer support, customer success, services delivery, and there are experts in a particular solution, a product, an industry, right, from each of those different groups. And my advice would be to pull those team members together, figure out who's the expert from product, who's the expert from services, so on and so forth, and pull those teams together to really drive home what is the best way to implement, maintain, configure, and roll out a particular solution. You want to get those folks engaged and then really focus in and hone in on what are your scope templates and then build out a formal content register. Great news is I've got a content register template and then a documentation template that I'll share out with anyone who sends me a DM or a comment on the post for this meeting. But this is going to help you out by enabling you to standardize your documentation, right? You want scope statements, you want those standard deliverables, success criteria, things that don't go well, all of those types of things. And we'll dig into them a little bit more in just a bit that we want to start tracking on our standard offerings. So the content register is really simple. It's helping us to catalog or register the pieces of content and collateral that we've got that we're going to use at some point in the near term future to feed into a language model, build out our custom GPTs. We're going to use these as a framework to help other technology firms that are building and selling AI and services enabled chat agents and work productive agents as well. So it all starts with the documentation. Same thing that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. If you've got bad information going into your delivery, you're going to get bad information and bad results coming out. Same thing with AI, chatbots, agents, right? All of those types of things rely on a meaningful set of data, decision points, right? Things to watch out for, and then tune to your specific business, your processes, your product, nuances, things like that. That's all what you're going to use this content register and the document template to help drive, right? So that when you implement an artificial intelligence solution, whether you're building your own or purchasing a software that someone else has created, it starts with your foundational documents, right? Your intellectual property and collateral, so that you can be assured that the information that your customers or you and your employees are getting out of those tools are actually meaningful and valid, and you don't have to worry about missing a piece of key information that's going to give your customers a bad experience, delay things, and give them a clunky solution. So we're going to encourage you to create a best practices repository. And what I mean by that is a place where you can start cataloging all of this documentation. It's got all of your common goals and risks per solution or offering, what are the ideal implementation steps, and then common deviations that you face along the way. You want to provide as much nuance and detail and information as possible. So breaking things down, by different portions of the implementation or different teams that are delivering typically, whether it's quality assurance, these are the particular steps for training. These are the steps that are commonly encountered when we're trying to integrate our solution or our product with another product, right? And then add those industry size and scale and ecosystem nuances to your documentation, right? We want to make sure that we've got the best way to implement what are the lessons learned from our prior initiatives. We want to learn what are the things that if we're doing a discovery or a design session with a customer and we hear these keywords or this phrase, that's a red flag for us downstream to pause and maybe dig in a little bit deeper, right? We want to make sure that all of those types of things are incorporated so that we can be prepared for AI and agents in the future to help us do the work a lot quicker, a lot more efficiently, and with a lot less friction. So you always want to start when you're building out a document for an offering or a solution with clear metadata. So the templates that I'll provide to you if you send me a message, right, will include this information, but you want to make sure that you've got a title, version and a date that helps you ensure that this is up to date. We want to make sure that we know who owns this collateral and this content. We want to understand the purpose and then who the intended audience is for, right? So that the language model and AI in the future can utilize this information and provide people with the best and most appropriate insights. You want to make sure that you've got a lot of good structure and that you're following the consistent structure throughout all of your documents. So you want to aim for that consistent template. Again, I'll provide it to you if you reach out and ask me for it. But the structure of that document and my recommended structure is really providing that overview. What is this document about? Why does it matter? What do people want to use it for, right? Make sure that you're being explicit, right? And being plain about definitions and key terms. If you think about a customer or a partner or a brand new consultant trying to use a chat agent to figure out how to implement or deploy a solution, they're not going to be familiar with industry, specific terms perhaps. Maybe they've got a different definition than someone else. So it's best to avoid any jargon or solution specific or product specific terms. You want to make them as general as possible. And then also tie in what is that particular term called in your solution. We want to also build out a list of what prerequisites must be true or things that must be completed before this particular solution or the step in the implementation can be completed. We want to make sure that we've got that step-by-step guidance, right? So you want a tool to be able to give you or give your customer self-service ability. They're going to need to understand what's that step-by-step instruction. Install this, click on this menu, select this drop-down, add these values. Those types of things with clear instruction and logical sequencing are really going to make or break whether or not this documentation can be fed into a model and be used by agents in the future successfully or not. You want to make sure that you've got, again, those configuration details as mostly defined as you can, right? We want the parameters, all of the values that might be necessary for a particular implementation, the options that are relevant, all of those things included. And then I can't emphasize this last one enough. What are those best practices, tips and tricks, those pieces of contextual advice, things that we've seen 100 times, but only 1 or 2 people have worked on them because they're our most senior consultants? We want all of those things that are embedded in people's brains to be documented so that the agents and the technology can help guide us and help do the work for us in the future, right? By getting those things all documented. So it really starts with getting these things documented, helping us to understand what are the troubleshooting scenarios that we keep on coming up across. Frequently asked questions are great as well so that we can be smart about the way that we're asking the agent, how do I do X, Y, or Z? What are some of the things that the agent needs to know to ask us, more intelligent, leading questions and things like that. And then we want to also have links and call outs to supporting material. So if we've got module reference guides that our product team has created or configuration guides that, somebody on your team has created, we want to also get those embedded into our knowledge base and link out to them. We want to all have all of this information completed and built out together. And as I mentioned earlier, I've got a template. So reach out for me. Don't fret over building out a template for your documentation capture or your content register. I'm happy to provide those to you at no cost. When we're thinking of contextual tags and topics, this is something that if you think of a computer system, AI, a large language model, a GPT, right, trying to dig through all of the information, we're going to look at cataloging in our documentation keywords and tags to help identify what's the product, right? What process are we building this documentation for? Is it industry specific or right region specific? Is it global? Things of that nature. These really just help the tool index and retrieve that content in a more timely and accurate fashion. We want to also incorporate into our documentation, who does each of these steps today, right? What system or environment does this happen in today? Can certain things only happen in a test environment or a production environment? Where and when in the project lifecycle do these things occur? As I mentioned before, using plain language and standard terms really help you avoid that ambiguous language so that the language model can understand what somebody is asking, right? Avoiding that jargon, use consistent templates and terminology, things of that nature. We want to make sure that we've incorporated explicit decision points, right? So spell out when and how someone would do each of these tasks today. What is the intended example or scenario in which it would be used? And then if you've got diagrams and flowcharts and checklists and things like that today, make sure that you clean those up and ensure that those are incorporated as well. You want to also make sure that you're documenting what permissions and confidentiality parameters there might be, right? Are there certain steps that might have ramifications for data security, things like that we want to make sure that we're noting very explicitly. And then what I like to recommend as well is having a consistent file naming and storage place. So we want to make sure that you've got a consistent file naming and storage repository so that standard naming convention can help us clean up our content register so that we know what documentation we have, what is in process of being revised, what is fully complete, things like that. We want to make sure that we've got this documentation in a centralized and searchable repository because remember what I said earlier is we are building for the future, but this information is key and meaningful today, right? So we can start using this documentation to help enable our partners, our brand new consultants, and even provide feedback to customers that are looking to do self-service ability today. We want to make sure that we're continually learning and growing, right? And that if we find a nuance that just doesn't feel right, or we've got a piece of documentation that maybe led someone down the wrong path, we want to get all of these things cataloged. So in your document, right, that is highlighting and walking through a particular solution, best practices and configuration, we want to put an owner there for who owns the corrections, and then how to request updates or how to flag gaps in the process and things of that nature throughout. And then, if we use standard documentation, right, it enables our project teams to never start from scratch. This consistency is really going to help us today, as I said earlier, but then help enable us for the future to be more usable by AI models. It's going to help reduce ambiguity, improve accuracy, and help us to be better consultants and give our customers better experiences. I want to encourage you again to start small and scale fast. You don't need to be an AI expert today to start. You don't have to have a large AI budget or an AI budget at all. Like most professional services and delivery teams do not have a AI or a forward-thinking budget today to help them optimize the way that they're delivering, right? You don't need to already have a tool. You don't need to have a knowledge base set up or a template. I've got a template for you, but really start by documenting what you do well and don't do well, structure it clearly following the guide that I'll provide to you, and then making it searchable and shareable. Because really that, as I said a lot today, is going to help you today in the current state to be more consistent with your delivery motions, right? Give your customers a more consistent and better, faster experience. Help your team members understand how to implement specific solutions, look out for the things that they need to avoid. And then ultimately, it lays the groundwork for that AI-assisted support. And that's really important because we don't want to be left behind, right? We don't want to be left in the dust, right? When our competitors have AI-assisted self-service ability, right? So I bring you back to the question that we started with. How confident are you in your current documentation to guide AI or self-serviceable support? Because at the end of the day, chat agents are popping up everywhere. So what if your team had a purpose-built set of agents to help you deliver with your customers and partners? It all starts with getting your documentation in a row, having it to be clear and consistent, right? Being bought into documenting your current practices, your methodology, configuration, things to avoid, things to lean into, right? All of those things will help you lay the groundwork for the AI assisted future.